Frost joined Key Pharmaceuticals in 1972, reformulated its asthma drug, and sold the company in 1986 for $836 million. Frost founded Ivax, a generic drug maker, in 1987. He sold it to Teva Pharmaceuticals for $7.6 billion in 2005. One of the things to note with Philip Frost that many people will talk about is that in 2018, the SEC accused him of participating in a pump and dump scheme that generated over $27 million from an unlawful stock sale. Frost denied the allegations in a personal statement. He settled with the SEC in 2018 without admitting or denying the allegations. Many people see this as a bit of a stain on his reputation, and I can kind of see why. But one of the things I'm looking at is that this fortune that we can see right here, this has been amassed through building out pharmaceutical companies from scratch and selling them on, developing breakthrough therapies in significant unmet needs and making money from that, and not through pump and dump schemes. It's worth noting that should he be proved, if he does this kind of thing again, that again this is going to put a stain on his reputation. And at the same time, he's in his 90s now, and this is another thing that people will say, is that how is he managing to operate these companies when he's into his 90s? And my interpretation of that situation is that, Philip Frost is no longer a very hands-on individual. Yes, he's got this background in pharmaceuticals, but very much like the case with Warren Buffett, he has implemented strategies and a handover to highly capable people that he's built relationships and trust over decades and decades and decades of being in this industry. Much like Warren Buffett, the handover to Greg Abel with Berkshire Hathaway was done kind of significant a number of years ago. That was kind of a long-term process and a long-term vision. It's very much the same process with Philip Frost at the moment. He has got other people, movers and shakers, people that make executive decisions on his behalf. One of those being Fred Hassan. And Fred Hassan, he's the other major insider of CoCrystal Pharmaceuticals. I think he holds in the region of 10% of the stock. We can see Fred Hassan was a former chief executive of Schering-Plough and Pharmacia, and he also took control of an eye care firm called Bausch & Lomb. Here it states that he sold Pharmacia to Pfizer and Schering to Merck, both times delivering gains to investors. We can see right here that Fred Hassan also sits on the board of directors of Precigen. Precigen is a stock that you will see that I've been documenting for over 2.5 years or thereabouts. I was tracking it at $1 and under, and followed it all the way up to its approval when it reached $5 or thereabouts. And this holding Precigen was also in this portfolio too, but I actually sold it at a profit and then reallocated funds across Immunity Bio, Allergene Therapeutics, and CoCrystal Pharmaceuticals. Pretty much my investment strategy is to look for highly skilled individuals. They must have inside ownership of the companies that I'm investing in. Essentially what I'm doing is I'm partnering with those individuals. I'm partnering and aligning with their expertise, their experience. I'm very much putting a lot of trust in their decision making. And this is all on the basis of having seen them do it before. They have a proven track record, which is why I can put in what many people would judge to be quite significant amounts of money because of their proven track record and their world-class pedigree. One of the things I would say is that just because I'm doing this kind of thing, I wouldn't necessarily recommend this to everyone. I really do recommend really trying to get an intimate understanding of these companies. That's what I do essentially, is I'm trying to really understand and get to grips with everything that's going on with these companies, which is why I can have such a level of conviction or trust and belief in what I'm doing. But like I said, this is not for everyone, and I wouldn't recommend this to anyone really. One of the key things to look at with CoCrystal Pharmaceuticals is that we can see that right now it's actually experienced a decline. And I think that this is a really good example. This is a really good example of what could happen. And actually, it can decline even further than this. This is a pretty small decline in my eyes. And like I said, I'm not super concerned by it, simply because of the analysis that I've done, the understanding of the company, looking at the treatment as well, looking at the developments that they're trying to do. They're trying to develop cures for neurovirus and a range of other viruses too. And it's looking at the details around the market opportunity there, being a treatment that potentially meets a significant unmet need in the market, but also looking at the experts and the team, not just Philip Frost, not just Fred Hassan, but a number of the other team members who are involved in the company too. And it's what gives me conviction on this company.